Havana is currently engulfed in total darkness. The 67-year-old Cuban Revolution now faces its most severe existential threat since the historic missile crisis. As a catastrophic nationwide grid collapse leaves 11 million citizens without power, water, or food security, the internal stability of the island begins to fracture. A reinforced maximum pressure campaign from the Trump administration has effectively severed the island's last remaining energy lifelines through a tightening U.S. naval blockade.
With the recent fall of the Maduro government in Venezuela, the question is no longer if the Cuban system will collapse, but how much longer. Tonight, we examine the breaking point of a nation and the potential for a historic geopolitical shift that could redefine American foreign policy for generations.
As of March 18, 2026, Cuba is currently reeling from its most severe systemic failure in nearly 7 decades, following a total national grid disconnection. The national power grid suffered a total collapse on March 16. While partially restored, millions of citizens remain trapped in a state of extreme energy precariousness. Authorities confirm the Antonio Guiteras plant is back online. However, it operates at a fraction of its capacity due to fuel shortages and decades of deferred maintenance. The crisis has now escalated into a humanitarian emergency. The United Nations reports that the 29-hour blackout has crippled water pumping systems in major urban centers. On the streets, the traditional cacerolazo has turned into direct confrontation. In Morón, protesters were filmed ransacking a Communist Party headquarters, burning documents in the street. President Miguel Díaz-Canel acknowledged the public's frustration but warned of no impunity, signaling a massive state-led crackdown as dissent spreads far beyond the capital of Havana. The current collapse is the culmination of a 2-year downward spiral that has accelerated into a total systemic emergency, reaching the definitive zero hour. October 2024 marked the first warning. Cuba experienced its initial nationwide grid failure following Hurricane Rafael and critical technical malfunctions at the Antonio Guiteras plant. In January 2026, the second Trump administration supported a rapid military intervention in Venezuela, leading to the ouster of Nicolás Maduro and shifting regional power. For Havana, this meant the immediate loss of 55,000 barrels of subsidized crude oil per day, the vital lifeblood of the entire Cuban electrical system. By February, a total energy blockade was implemented via executive order, threatening secondary sanctions and massive tariffs on any third-party nation attempting fuel shipments. By mid-February, jet fuel stocks were completely depleted. This grounded the tourism sector, effectively eliminating the nation's last remaining source of critical hard currency. On March 16, at approximately 11 a.m., the national grid suffered a catastrophic total disconnection, plunging 11 million people into absolute darkness for 29 hours. Today, the island operates on a survival load. Power is strictly prioritized for military installations, leaving the general population with less than 4 hours of electricity. The international community is sharply divided as the Trump administration shifts from economic containment toward a strategy of active transition regarding the Cuban state. Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoed this sentiment, asserting that Cuba's current political system cannot be fixed and demanding fundamental leadership change for sanctions relief. This Maximum Pressure 2.0 campaign faces global pushback. In Italy, the Nuestra America convoy has departed, carrying 20 tons of critical food and medical supplies. Moscow and Beijing are filling the vacuum. Russia reaffirms its unwavering solidarity, while Chinese-backed solar projects now reportedly provide 10% of Cuba's total electricity. Regional allies are retreating under the threat of U.S. tariffs. Mexico and Nicaragua have suspended support, further isolating the Díaz-Canel administration within the Western Hemisphere. The current crisis represents more than a domestic energy failure. It is the front line of a reshaped geopolitical order within the entire Western Hemisphere. For the first time since the Cold War, the United States pursues a policy of unrestricted economic strangulation to force the total dissolution of Cuban administrative control. Under the Trump administration, the U.S. has revived the 19th-century Monroe Doctrine, aiming to eliminate malignant extra-regional influence from Russia, China, and Iran. The 2026 Total Energy Blockade sets a global precedent, demonstrating Washington's willingness to weaponize the global energy supply chain to achieve rapid regime change. For Havana, the stakes are existential. If the government survives through Chinese technology and Russian shadow fleets, it proves U.S. economic hegemony is no longer absolute.
Ultimately, the collapse or survival of the 67-year-old socialist system will redefine the limits of American power in its own geographical backyard for a generation.
As Cuba enters a period of unprecedented instability, three primary scenarios are now emerging among elite geopolitical intelligence circles regarding the nation's immediate future. Scenario 1. The internal fracture. Under extreme pressure, the revolutionary armed forces may break, leading to a military-led transitional council that outs the current leadership. Scenario 2. The Eurasian life support. Cuba stabilizes at a survival level by pivoting fully toward Moscow and Beijing, utilizing Russian oil and Chinese solar technology.
Scenario 3. The friendly takeover. President Trump's rhetoric could materialize into a formal ultimatum, potentially escalating from a naval quarantine to targeted kinetic strikes on hubs.
Regardless of the path, the 67-year status quo is no longer an option. Targeted energy sieges have brought the state to its ultimate drop-dead date. Tonight, we stand at the precipice of a historic shift. The world watches as the Caribbean's last Cold War bastion faces its final, most decisive hour. As of March 18, 2026, the humanitarian situation across the island has reached a critical threshold. The 29-hour total blackout has effectively paralyzed the nation.
With the ouster of the Maduro government in January, the United States has successfully closed the Venezuelan oil artery, which previously supplied 35,000 barrels daily.
President Trump's national emergency declaration now empowers the Treasury to impose massive tariffs on any third-party nation, including Mexico, attempting to bypass the energy blockade. In Havana, only 5% of the grid has been restored. Critical infrastructure, including water pumping and hospitals, now operates exclusively on dwindling emergency fuel reserves. Secretary of State Marco Rubio continues to demand a fundamental leadership change, while Russian and Chinese officials condemn what they term illegal unilateral energy warfare. The Cuban government has reported a total disconnection of the national power system. Without immediate fuel intervention, the state faces an irreversible socioeconomic collapse.